Hey, this is Dr. Troy with Bilingual Barrier Busters. Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about people growing up in the United States who speak Spanish at home, but never go to school in Spanish, never really use Spanish very much outside of their neighborhood environment. Now, they speak Spanish, and they speak Spanish as a native. However, just imagine this. If you needed an interpreter for people who, well, let's say you needed somebody to interpret to English-speaking people, and you had to have a conversation with them, and you were using one of their kids to be the interpreter. Let's say a little kid. Let's say somebody. Let's say somebody maybe 10 years old. Now that person speaks English. And so would you call them in and say, all right, we need to discuss your insurance portfolio. We need to discuss annuities. And then we need to discuss stock options as well. And by the way, we need to tell you about our fiduciary responsibilities. No? Would you use a kid to give legal advice and talk about maybe to talk about somebody's bond conditions, or to talk about somebody's courtroom procedures, or to talk about somebody's exposure to liability under the law? Probably not. Would you take a kid to talk about medical terminology? Would you have them go in and try to explain the results of tests or disease processes or medical side effects? Probably not, because you'd realize that at that age, these kids have no background in those things. They've never read about it before, they've never heard about it before, and they really don't know the terminology. Well, the same thing happens when people grow up in the United States, never living outside of the United States, and only speak Spanish because that's the language their parents speak. Yes, they're way ahead. They can certainly sound native, but because they lack all of the background in these different areas, trying to use them as interpreters is the same as using a 9 or a 10-year-old. They just don't have the background. Now, they can acquire the background, but this is something you need to stop and think about next time you decide to use maybe a family member as an interpreter for an important business matter or something. Make sure the background is there for them to be able to do an adequate job.